This documentary is an overview of the positive and negative aspects of HS2 for the homeowners of Kenilworth, with a particular focus on the types of compensation available. This map shows the proposed route of the HS2 train. As you can see, it will be travelling from London Euston to Birmingham in Phase 1, and then will be carrying on to Manchester Piccadilly and Leeds in Phase 2. This video is going to focus on Phase 1 of the project, and more specifically, the stretch of track running by the town of Kenilworth. This town is very near our university, which allowed us to see direct examples of the people and the areas that HS2 was likely to affect. Even though we are focusing on such a small area of the route, hundreds of homeowners across the country are going to be affected. The train will have many effects on the residents, both positive and negative. Unlike in London and a few other towns, the HS2 line in Kenilworth will be above ground, meaning it will run straight through fields and also will result in homeowners having to move out. The compensation they may or may not receive is the main topic of this video. A more detailed view of the track can be viewed at the HS2 official website, which depicts an entire interactive map showing the route. Kenilworth has a population of about 25,308 people and a population density of 8.6 people per hectare. Just over a quarter of those are between the ages of 40 and 60. However, there is also a large population of young adults, mainly due to the close proximity of the University of Warwick. Considering social aspects, Kenilworth is very successful with a very low level of income deprivation and child poverty at only 5.3% and 6.2% respectively. On top of this, pupils in the local area do better than average, with 76.7% of them achieving A stars to Cs in their GCSEs. This is both higher than Warwick average and the national average. This may be one of the contributing factors that has led to both short and long-term unemployment rates being lower than national average. Around 2/3 of the total households in the area are detached and semi-detached, split about half and half. Around 80% of the houses are mortgaged or owned outright, showing the wealth in the town. 11.6% of the households are privately rented, however these are likely to be rented out by students at the University of Warwick. Just over 16% of these are terraced houses and 13.4% are blocks of flats which have been purpose-built. These statistics depict the current wealth of the town is relatively high, which will be affected by HS2. It is interesting that residential parking was identified as the biggest problem in the area. This implies a problem with space and transport overcrowding, a problem which will not be helped by an increased number of people travelling into the area for HS2. Despite this, 95.6% of Kenilworth residents are satisfied with the place they live. There are many negatives that will affect Kenilworth if the HS2 project goes ahead. However, there are also several positive effects which cannot be overlooked, but these will be described later in the video. Firstly, the effect on the environment will be very detrimental on ecosystems and biodiversity. The route goes through several fields in the surrounding area, resulting in the destruction of habitats and niches. This will mean that the organisms living there will either be killed or have to migrate out of the area, thus reducing the biodiversity. There will also be a lot more pollution due to the noise of the buildings, the lights used when building at night, and the added traffic of the workers. These will all affect the local wildlife as well as the residents of the town, and this is all before HS2 has been built. After it is running, the town will become a lot more congested with traffic and the people passing through. The residents of Kenilworth already have stated that they are not happy with the amount of parking, which is a problem at the current time. This problem will now no doubt increase with HS2. A social problem will be that people are going to have to move out of their houses if the line goes within a certain distance of their home. Obviously, many people are not happy about this, and the compensation they will receive is not enough when you consider sentimental value. A deeper look into compensation and the different types will occur later in the video. Some residents of Kenilworth believe that the money will be better invested into roads and education. They favour an improvement to what is currently there rather than building something new.
Though the environmental effects are largely negative, both the economic and social aspects of HS2 look much more promising for Kenilworth. The investment in HS2 will have direct effects on surrounding communities throughout the route, particularly Kenilworth, for a number of reasons. There may be local job opportunities for Kenilworth residents in terms of construction and, more importantly for the long-term, operation. The investment into building and running HS2 will also have knock-on economic effects in Kenilworth, even in industries not related to HS2, though this may be reduced by those suffering financially from the compensation schemes. Moreover, the nearest station on the HS2 route will be Birmingham Interchange, just over 12 miles from Kenilworth. This will provide massive benefits to Kenilworth residents who work in Birmingham or commute to London, as well as indirectly to all Kenilworth residents through the improvements to Birmingham's microeconomy and social importance within the UK. Finally, the new route may raise the profile of Kenilworth in the Midlands, enlightening residents of surrounding areas to the fact that it is an attractive town, worthwhile of visiting. Though relatively small, Kenilworth is a lovely place for a day visit, with a range of restaurants, shops and beautiful walks. Of course, the irony is that many of these beautiful walks will be ruined by the HS2 line. However, if some do remain, the raised profile of Kenilworth would serve to better the town on both a social and economic level. In an interview with BBC News in 2015, Mr McLaughlin, the Transport Secretary, stated, "This comprehensive package of compensation and assistance is looking after those people who live along the HS2 route while balancing our responsibilities to the taxpayer." He also said the package of support went well beyond the government's legal obligations, and a new residents' charter overseen by a commissioner would ensure people were treated fairly.
It's the fact that we're looking at the whole the railway development and network, and there are more demands now to use the trains. So as I've seen today, all the local authority have been very welcoming of the news that I've announced today. This is one of 4 stations that we've announced that will be reopening.
One issue with the government offering better compensation than legally necessary for the HS2 project is that it is unfair to those not affected, and to those affected by other projects where the compensation provided is proportionally less. This is a highly contentious area, particularly as fairness is stated as one of the government's 3 main criteria when determining compensation. It is, though, very difficult for the government to offer the right amount of compensation, given the huge opposition to HS2 and the uproar of homeowners and communities affected by HS2 through no fault of their own. Indeed, it is unlikely that there is any level of financial compensation at all that would reduce the HS2 opposition to an insignificant level. Yet at the same time, there are some homeowners who will receive compensation despite hardly being affected by the line or not being bothered by the effects of its construction and operation. This is simply the nature of having concrete zones and compensation levels for all those within those zones. Good evening and welcome to our discussion of homeowner compensation in the area of Kenilworth. Here to join us today are Vicky Shanks, a homeowner who is facing compulsory purchase of her farm, and Elizabeth Crane, who lives just outside of the compensation area. Furthermore, we will be hearing from a realtor working in the area of Kenilworth, as well as myself, a representative of HS2. Further information about opinions mentioned in this broadcast, as well as other ideas, can be found under the link.
Vicky Shanks lives in Birch's Farm, Kenilworth, together with her 7 children. Now their home is about to become inhabitable. Having remodeled the house in order for the children, several of which face health issues ranging from anxiety over autism to cerebral palsy to comfortably live in, She would not only have to find a new home for her entire family, but also spend large amounts of money adapting the house to their needs. But selling isn't an option if the Shanks have anything to say about it. The house is full of memories of their father and husband who committed suicide a few years ago, and therefore is of huge personal and sentimental value. The family owns a large property with the border of their land being as close as 60 meters to the train line. Their home, however, is located within the Homeowner Payment Zone 1. This means they are eligible to receive up to £22,500 in compensation. Referring to HS2 and the government, Vicky says, "They just don't give a shit about people and their human rights."
I think it's important to remember that we only have part of the picture. Judging by the little information I have, it seems that you have made the conscious decision not to sell your property, which will bring you much greater benefits. It is also important to remember that this is a single case. Your story is extraordinary, and while we have tried to make our compensation scheme as flexible and as accessible as was possible at this point, the compensation scheme will not be able to accommodate for everyone at the same level. I will, however, talk to some people to see exactly what we could do for you and for your family.
Not only is the compensation scheme completely messed up, but you and everyone else at HS2 don't respect or care about the people you are hurting with this project. Even if I were to sell my property, I wouldn't even be able to pay off the mortgage on it. It will leave me and my children homeless, without a house to live in.
The firm Maychild is an estate agency serving various areas in Warwickshire, including Kenilworth. Miss Margaret sees HS2 affecting the area in various ways. She could see Kenilworth gaining popularity, thanks to faster connections and increased accessibility. However, this could result in changes in the market of people entering the area, which currently is dominated by young adults, not unlikely due to its proximity to the University of Warwick, according to the UK government. When asked how HS2 would affect her work, she said that she could see an increase in the desire to sell and move by people who were not thinking of doing so prior, while others who had wanted to sell will no longer be able to for the same price as before the announcement of the route. Mr. Walmsley from the Elizabeth Davenport Estate Agents in Kenilworth has called the project a monumental waste of money. He sees many local villages experiencing negative impacts due to, for example, the road infrastructure suffering. He also notes that there will be no benefits arising from HS2 regarding travel time to London, seeing as residents will have to travel to Birmingham to get on the train.
Firstly, I'd like to address the fact that there are many benefits brought about by HS2 as well as some negatives. Miss Margaret is in fact correct, and HS2 will increase connections and bring new opportunities to the area.
That doesn't replace the fact that many people will be losing their homes.
I'm afraid that's just part of the sacrifice we have to make for a better future.
Personally, I'm saddened by the fact that I have lost my house, and it's only slightly comforting that I'll be receiving compensation.
Whereas for me, it's heartbreaking to see so many others being affected by these plans, but no one seems to care.
Unfortunately, we have to draw the line somewhere and decide who gets compensation and who doesn't. I apologise for those who haven't been compensated.
I personally do feel like many of the people who are directly and indirectly affected have not been considered by the government.
I believe I and many others have been unfairly treated. For example,
Mrs. Taylor lives in a house on Cryfield Grange Road, about 300 meters from the planned HS2 route. Since finding out about HS2, the family has decided to sell their house as soon as the mortgage is paid off. The prices in the area in general have been rising, and Mrs. Taylor hopes to take advantage of this before the train arrives. The businesswoman feels she isn't being treated fairly when it comes to the compensation scheme. Although she could apply for a scheme, she doesn't believe her application would be approved.
Why haven't you applied to the scheme?
There's various reasons, actually. To start with, I just believe the whole process is too complicated to deal with, seeing as I don't have a large chance of receiving compensation.
Well then, there you go. You won't receive any because HS2 won't affect you. The compensation scheme has been put in place and closely worked out to accommodate for those who are affected and not for those who aren't. You clearly aren't.
To be honest, of course at this moment I'm not. Construction hasn't started yet, and my land is not set to be purchased. So, yes, for the moment I'm not being affected.
So then, what is the issue?
That, however, does not mean that I won't be affected in the future. As far as I'm aware, we could be experiencing extensive noise pollution. But back to your question. The scheme I could apply to has an unlimited distance. However, the closer one is to the train, the more likely you are to receive compensation, if I've understood that correctly.
Yes, that's correct.
There's nothing to differentiate me from other homeowners in my neighborhood. who will be experiencing effects from HS2. Therefore, I don't have a large chance of receiving compensation. If I was awarded compensation, then every house with the same distance from HS2 could claim compensation. If that was possible, the scheme would have been extended. To start with, listen, I understood that compensation can never be completely fair. You must agree.
Yes, but I believe we've made the compensation scheme as fair as possible. Let's take a closer look at this.
Fairness as a word can be seen from many different perspectives. For the sake of this discussion, we are going to define fairness in a sense that can be equal to the word justice, in other words, with reference to a standard of rightness. While there are different types of justice, compensatory justice, defined as the extent to which people are fairly compensated for the injuries by the people who have injured them, is essential. In this case, the injury would be the loss of housing or decrease in living standards, as well as future benefits which could arise from housing. The people who have injured them, HS2, or the government as a whole. When it comes to compulsory purchase and compensation for it, most academics agree that it can never be completely fair, as it involves asking people to give up something that is theirs involuntarily. Unless compensation is paid according to a person's personal value of their possessions, usually higher than market value, compensation schemes will remain unfair. Taking away a person's autonomy to sell their property at a value which they deem appropriate after taking account of such things as sentimental value remains a major flaw in compensation.
All feel treated fairly. The government neither cares about the effects of the HS2 on its population, nor about the fact that the majority of citizens won't even be using the train while still having to pay huge sums of money to the government for the project. HS2 could leave my children and myself homeless, even with compensation.
I'm not sure. So far, I can't see any real effects of HS2 on me as a homeowner, but construction hasn't started yet, so I'm not completely relieved just yet. If the train does end up affecting me in any way, I won't feel treated fairly, as I have to live with the effects without gaining even a small benefit.
From my perspective, compensation scheme has many different sides to it. Depending on where you are, the project including compensation could mean bad or good things for you. As I have previously stated, I believe HS2 will affect people very differently. For me personally, as an estate agent, the project had led to an increase of people thinking about buying, which of course is good for business. This could change as construction progresses, however, so I am still a bit worried.
I'm convinced the government and HS2 have done everything in their power to support the people affected by HS2. Big projects like this will always affect some people more or less in the short term. However, in the long term, it will make the UK as a whole better off, affecting everyone positively.
All in all, we can say that HS2 is affecting people in different ways. Some are set to benefit, while others will lose. Hopefully, however, in the long run, everyone will be able to see the positives of this train line, which some hope will be something of a miracle cure for the aches of the divided country. While the project advances, we are stuck hoping that the Shanks story is a rare failure in the compensation scheme, which is on some levels very much advanced compared to the past compensation. Nevertheless, it is safe to say that unless new brilliant ideas are developed, compensation will never be completely fair, always leaving one side without a choice and without their autonomy to make their own decision regarding their property.